The massive ships appeared without warning. They blocked out the sun over every major city on Earth. The Dominion had arrived, and they came with demands, not diplomacy. Commander 1 stood in the war room deep beneath Sol, watching the screens as alien vessels positioned themselves over the planet. He had fought in 3 wars during his career. He knew the face of conquest when he saw it. Around him, officers shouted reports and coordinates. The room buzzed with controlled panic. On the main screen, an alien face appeared. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and skin that looked like polished stone. It spoke in perfect English, though the translation software made its voice sound hollow and cold. Humans of Earth, we are the Dominion. For 3,000 years we have brought order to this galaxy. You will surrender your world and accept our guidance. Resistance will result in pacification. The screen changed. Images played of burning cities on alien worlds, entire civilizations reduced to ash, that had destroyed species that resisted them. The message was clear: submit or die. Dr. Hayone, the standing beside one, gasped at the destruction, but the commander just smiled. It was not a happy smile. Finally, one said quietly, something worth fighting. Admiral Wu entered the war room. She was a stern woman with gray streaks in her hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. She looked at the alien ships on the screen and crossed her arms. "How long until they attack?" she asked. "They're giving us 24 hours to surrender," an officer reported. Wu nodded. "Good, that gives us time to prepare." She turned to one. "Get me the Security Council, all nations. Tell them we have 1 day to unite or die separately." Across the planet, something unexpected happened. They had studied human culture. They knew about human art, music, and diplomacy. They had watched Earth's internal conflicts and assumed humans would panic and fight among themselves. They were wrong. Instead of chaos, there was unity. Old enemies put aside their differences. Nations that had been at war for decades suddenly found common ground. Every military force on Earth began coordinating with each other. Civilian populations didn't flee in terror. They volunteered for service. Factories that made cars started making weapons. Scientists who studied medicine began studying alien technology. They had made a critical mistake. They had ignored the one thing humans excelled at: warfare. 24 hours later, when they sent their final demand, Earth's response was broadcast on every frequency. Admiral Wu stood before the camera, her uniform crisp, her expression hard. "Dominion, your ultimatum is rejected. If you want Earth, come and take it. But know this, we've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We know every trick, every tactic, every dirty method of warfare ever invented. You picked the wrong species to threaten." The transmission ended. The War Council received the message with confusion. No primitive species had ever refused them. They decided to teach humanity a lesson. They came at dawn. Their landing craft descended on major cities across the globe. They deployed shock troops that had broken the spirit of countless alien races. These creatures stood 3 meters tall, covered in armor that could deflect most weapons. They had claws that could tear through steel. They landed in Seoul expecting to see humans running in terror. Instead, they found prepared defensive positions. Lieutenant Wu Jin crouched behind rubble with his squad. He was young, barely 25, but he had trained for urban combat his entire military career. He watched the alien soldiers march down the street with their weapons ready. They moved in standard formation, expecting direct confrontation. "Wait for it," Wu Jin whispered into his radio. They reached the intersection. Wu Jin triggered the explosives his team had placed in the buildings on both sides. The structures collapsed inward, crushing half the alien squad under tons of concrete and steel. The survivors stumbled in confusion. They had never faced an ambush before. Now Wu Jin shouted. His squad opened fire from 3 different directions. They used armor-piercing rounds modified with tips made from the aliens' own technology that Dr. Haywan's team had analyzed. The bullets punched through the armor. The aliens fell, shocked that their protection meant nothing. This scene repeated across Earth. In New York, fighters used the subway system to attack from below. In Moscow, soldiers baited aliens into kill zones and buried them under focused artillery fire. In Lagos, civilians helped soldiers set traps using everyday materials turned into deadly weapons. They had never experienced guerrilla warfare. They didn't understand ambushes, improvised explosives, or coordinated civilian resistance. Every species they had conquered before fought honorably in open battle. Humans fought to win, honor be damned. In orbit above Earth, Captain Jin piloted her fighter through a storm of enemy fire. Her squadron was outnumbered 20-1. Her instruments screamed warnings. Her hull was breached in 3 places, but she kept flying. "Captain, we need to retreat," her wingman shouted over the radio. "Negative," Jin replied calmly. She aimed her damaged fighter at the massive carrier ahead. "If I'm going down, I'm taking them with me." She punched the throttle to maximum. Her fighter screamed toward the carrier like a missile. They tried to shoot her down, but her erratic flight pattern made her impossible to hit. At the last second, she ejected. Her fighter slammed into the carrier's engine core. The explosion was beautiful. The carrier's power systems overloaded in a chain reaction. Energy tore through the ship from the inside. Secondary explosions ripped through the hull. The carrier broke apart, and its debris destroyed 3 escort ships. Jin's escape pod drifted in space, watching the destruction. She smiled despite the pain from her injuries. "Worth it," she muttered before passing out. Back on Earth, they were retreating. Their landing forces had suffered 70% casualties. Entire squads had been wiped out by enemies they never saw coming. Their proud warriors were being beaten by what they considered primitive soldiers. In the command ship, the War Council watched the reports in stunned silence. One commander finally spoke, his voice shaking. "They don't fight like civilized species. They fight like they were born for war, like they enjoy it." Another commander reviewed footage of the battles. He saw human soldiers laughing as they set traps. He saw civilians throwing homemade explosives from windows. He saw coordinated attacks that showed centuries of tactical evolution. "We studied their culture," he said quietly, "their art, their diplomacy, their philosophy, but we ignored their history. They've been at war with each other for their entire existence. They've perfected warfare in ways we never imagined." The War Council made a decision. They would pull back, regroup, and call for reinforcements. Surely with more ships and better preparation, they could defeat these humans. But as the fleet retreated to the outer solar system, Dr. Jinho was already at work. The weapons engineer had refused to evacuate his laboratory when the aliens landed. Instead, he had collected debris from destroyed alien ships. Now he examined their technology with hungry eyes. "Their weapons are efficient," he told his team, "but they're designed for overwhelming force against weaker enemies. They've never had to innovate under pressure." He smiled. "We have, and now we're going to show them what happens when you give humans access to your technology." Around the world, similar scenes were playing out. Engineers reverse-engineered alien shields. Scientists analyzed their power sources. Tacticians studied their ship formations and found weaknesses. Humanity had survived the first assault. Now they would prepare for the second. And this time they wouldn't just defend, they would attack. Commander 1 stood before the United Earth Command. 3 months had passed since this first assault. The aliens had retreated to regroup, expecting humans to simply wait and prepare their defenses. They were wrong again. "Ladies," one said, his voice steady, "they think they're hunters. They think we're prey cowering on our world, waiting for them to return. I propose we show them otherwise." He activated the holographic display. It showed the nearby star systems where they had established bases on conquered worlds. We have their technology now. Dr. Jinho's team has adapted it. Engineer Na has done the impossible and built us a faster-than-light ship. It's crude, it's dangerous, and it might explode if we push it too hard. But it works. Admiral Wu leaned forward. You want to take the fight to them? Yes. While they prepare for another invasion, we strike their supply lines. We liberate the worlds they've conquered. We teach them that humanity doesn't wait to be destroyed. We act first. The council debated for hours. Some argued it was too risky. Others said they should fortify Earth's defenses instead. But General Ah, the strategic mastermind who had coordinated Earth's defense, supported one's plan. They have never faced an enemy that counterattacks, she said. They're psychologically unprepared for it. If we hit them where they feel safe, we shatter their confidence. And confidence is everything in war. The vote passed. Humanity would go on the offensive. Engineer Nuss stood in the hangar, looking up at her creation. The ship was a patchwork of human and alien technology. It was ugly, asymmetrical, and looked like it might fall apart at any moment. Human engineers had nicknamed it Soul's Vengeance. The faster-than-light drive hummed with an unsettling whine that made everyone nervous. She's beautiful, Na said proudly. A technician beside her looked doubtful. Ma'am, with respect, the drive sounds like it's screaming. All the best weapons scream, Na replied with a grin. Colonel would lead the first strike team. He was a legend in special operations, a man who had conducted impossible missions in impossible situations. He selected his team carefully. 50 soldiers, the best humanity had to offer. Each one was a volunteer. Each one knew they might not come back. The target was IV, a world they had conquered 5 years ago. The native Pelions had been enslaved, forced to mine resources for the Dominion. They had a garrison of 5,000 soldiers there. They believed themselves untouchable. Soul's Vengeance launched at midnight. The faster-than-light jump felt like being turned inside out. Several soldiers vomited. The ship's hull groaned and shook. But after 3 agonizing minutes, they emerged in the system. We made it, Nuss' voice came through the speakers. And the ship only caught fire twice. That's better than our simulations predicted. Allowed himself a small smile. Then he turned to his team. All right, you know the mission. We land fast, we hit hard, and we get out. They think their conquered worlds are safe. Let's prove them wrong. The ship approached IV using stolen identification codes. The garrison didn't realize anything was wrong until the strike team was already landing. By then, it was too late. His team moved through the garrison like ghosts. They had studied tactical patterns and found them predictable. The aliens expected frontal assaults and defensive positions. They didn't expect humans to attack from ventilation shafts, use their own communication systems against them, or sabotage their power grid from the inside. The garrison commander realized something was wrong when his soldiers started disappearing. By the time he sounded the alarm, half his force was dead or captured. He tried to call for reinforcements, but the communication arrays were already destroyed. Found the Pelion slaves in underground mines. They were small, furry creatures with large eyes, beaten down by years of slavery. They cowered when the armed humans approached. We're not here to hurt you, said, using the translator device. We're here to free you, but you need to help us. We'll teach you how to fight back. One Pelion, braver than the others, stepped forward. You're from Earth, the world that defeated the... We didn't defeat them yet, replied. But we bloodied their nose, and now we're going to teach you how to do the same. Over the next week, his team trained the Pelions in guerrilla warfare. They showed them how to make improvised weapons from mining equipment. They taught them how to set ambushes and strike from shadows. The Pelions were quick learners, motivated by years of hatred for their oppressors. When the reinforcements finally arrived, they found the garrison destroyed and the slaves in open rebellion. The battle that followed was brutal, but this time the Pelions fought back with human tactics. They didn't fight honorably. They fought dirty. They retreated, shocked and confused. They had lost an entire garrison to a force they had considered helpless. Meanwhile, General Ah coordinated simultaneous attacks across 3 other systems. Human strike teams hit supply depots, communication relays, and transport ships. Each attack was surgical and devastating. The supply chain began to fracture. Back on Earth, Dr. Haywan studied captured soldiers. She learned about their society, their culture, their psychology. What she discovered was crucial. "They've never lost before," she told one. "Not really. They've conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years. Defeat is not just foreign to them. It's psychologically devastating. Each loss makes them doubt themselves more." One understood immediately. We're not just fighting a military campaign. We're fighting a psychological one. Exactly. Keep hitting them, keep winning, and they'll start to crumble from within. The strategy worked. Over the next 3 months, human forces liberated 6 conquered worlds. Each victory was broadcast across communication networks. Other enslaved species heard the news and began their own rebellions. The mighty Dominion, which had ruled for 3,000 years, started to crack. But the High Command wasn't ready to surrender. They had one final weapon, something they had never needed to use before. The Dreadnought, a mobile station capable of destroying entire planets. It had ended rebellions across 50 star systems. Now they would use it on Earth. When news of the Dreadnought reached Earth, there was silence in the command center. The weapon was massive, heavily shielded, and escorted by 100 warships. It could reduce Earth to rubble in minutes. "We can't stop that," an officer said quietly. Admiral Wu looked at the tactical display. She had led Earth's fleet for 3 months now, winning engagement after engagement. But this was different. This was overwhelming force. "We have to try," she said. The Dreadnought arrived at Earth 6 months after the war began. It was larger than Earth's moon, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. The High Command watched from the safety of their flagship, confident that this show of force would finally break human resistance. Admiral Wu commanded Earth's defense fleet from her bridge. She had 80 ships, cobbled together from human and stolen alien technology. Against the Dreadnought and its escorts, it should have been suicide. But Wu had a plan. "All ships," she broadcast. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy that thing with firepower. We're buying time. Stick to the plan and trust each other." The human fleet charged the Dreadnought in a seemingly suicidal assault. They opened fire, expecting to cut them down easily. But the human ships moved erratically, unpredictably. They broke formation and scattered, forcing the escorts to split up to chase them. "They're running," a commander reported. "The humans are fleeing." But they weren't fleeing. They were spreading out the enemy fleet, isolating targets and drawing attention away from Earth. On the planet below, Sung Min coordinated a different kind of battle. He had been a teacher before the war. Now he led resistance cells across 12 star systems. For weeks, his people had infiltrated supply depots, posing as enslaved species. They had waited patiently for this moment. Now, Sung Min transmitted. Across 12 systems, sabotage operations activated simultaneously. Supply depots exploded. Fuel reserves were contaminated. Communication networks were hacked. The supply chain, already damaged by months of human attacks, completely collapsed. The Dreadnought's commander received reports of the chaos. His reinforcements couldn't arrive. His supply ships were destroyed. He was alone with just his escorts, and the human fleet was proving far more difficult to eliminate than expected. Dr. Mi-sun, a psychologist who had been studying psychology, activated her part of the plan. She hijacked the communication network and began broadcasting on all frequencies. The broadcasts showed every human victory, every liberated world, every defeat. She played recordings of soldiers surrendering, crying, breaking under pressure. And she asked one question in their own language over and over. How does it feel to be prey? On ships across the galaxy, crews watched the broadcasts. Morale shattered. Some ships simply stopped fighting. Others abandoned their posts. A few even surrendered to human forces. The mighty Dominion was experiencing something it had never known: fear. Back at Earth, Engineer Nuh had prepared one final desperate plan. She had equipped an old mining ship with a prototype weapon based on captured technology. The device was designed to overload the dreadnought's power core by feeding it too much energy at once. It was untested, insane, and had a high chance of failing. "I'll pilot it," Nuh volunteered. "Absolutely not," Commander 1 said. "You're too valuable." "It needs someone who understands the technology," Nuh argued. "Someone who can adjust it in real time if something goes wrong. That's me." One wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He nodded reluctantly. Nuh piloted the mining ship toward the dreadnought. Admiral Wu's fleet provided cover, taking heavy casualties to keep the escorts busy. Nuh's ship was hit multiple times, but she kept going. Her hull was breached. Life support was failing, but she could see the dreadnought's power core through the weapon's fire. "Almost there," she muttered, hands steady despite the G-forces threatening to crush her. She activated the weapon. Energy poured into the dreadnought's core, far more than it was designed to handle. The massive station systems tried to compensate, but the overload was too great. Power surged through every system, overloading everything at once. "It's working," Nuh shouted into her radio. "Everyone get clear." She turned her ship away and punched the throttle. Behind her, the dreadnought began to tear itself apart. Explosions rippled across its hull. The power core went critical. The station that had destroyed 50 worlds exploded in a cascade of energy that lit up the entire solar system. Nuh's damaged ship barely made it out of the blast radius. She was rescued by a human patrol craft 3 hours later, unconscious but alive. When she woke up in the medical bay, Commander 1 was there. "You did it," he said simply. "The dreadnought is gone. The fleet is retreating." Nuh smiled weakly. "Tell me we didn't lose too many ships." "We lost 31, one said quietly. "But we saved Earth, and we broke the—" Across the galaxy, the news spread. The Dominion, undefeated for 3,000 years, had been beaten by the humans of Earth. Their mighty was destroyed. Their fleets were scattered. Their empire was crumbling. The High Command tried to rally their forces, but it was too late. Ships were deserting. Conquered worlds were rebelling. The psychological damage was too great. An empire built on fear and dominance couldn't survive once that aura of invincibility was shattered. 1 week after the battle, they sued for peace. 3 years passed. The galaxy was transformed. The Dominion had collapsed into a dozen smaller factions. Most had signed peace treaties with Earth. A few still resisted, but they were shadows of their former power. Across known space, 63 species had gained their freedom, most with the help of human military advisors and tactical support. Ambassador 1, formerly Commander 1, now led the Galactic Liberation Council. He worked from a space station orbiting Earth, meeting with representatives from dozens of worlds. The Council's mission was simple: ensure no species would ever be enslaved again. Admiral Wu had retired from active combat but ran a training program. Freed species sent their soldiers to learn human defensive warfare. Wu taught them guerrilla tactics, strategic flexibility, and the importance of fighting smart rather than fighting fair. "Honor is nice," she told a class of alien cadets, "but survival is better. Fight to win, not to look good." Dr. Haywan ran the first university on Earth. Students from across the galaxy came to study, share knowledge, and build friendships. They had realized that the best defense against future wars was mutual understanding and cooperation. Lieutenant Wu Jin, now Colonel Wu Jin, headed peacekeeping operations. His teams responded to conflicts across the galaxy, helping negotiate settlements and prevent wars before they started. He had seen enough violence during the war. Now he worked to prevent others from experiencing the same. Dr. Jinho, an engineer, now opened a joint research facility called the Coalition Technology Institute. They developed new technologies based on combined human and alien science. Their inventions were shared freely with all species. Knowledge, they believed, should never be hoarded. Captain Jin had survived her injuries and now trained the next generation of pilots. She taught them the tactics that had helped Earth survive: unpredictability, adaptability, and the willingness to take calculated risks. Her students came from 30 different worlds. Sung Min continued his work, but now as a teacher again. He ran leadership programs for freed species, teaching them how to organize, resist oppression, and build better societies. His motto was simple: the best weapon against tyranny is an educated population. Dr. Mi Sun's psychological warfare tactics had been so effective that she now advised the Council on diplomatic strategies. She helped species understand each other, bridging cultural gaps that might lead to conflict. But humanity's reputation had changed. Where once they were seen as primitive newcomers to galactic civilization, they were now regarded with respect and fear. Other species knew that humans were not conquerors, but they also knew humans were not to be threatened. A saying spread across the galaxy: never wake sleeping predators. One afternoon, a delegation arrived at the space station. They requested a meeting with Ambassador 1. The request was unusual. They had been quiet since their defeat, licking their wounds and rebuilding. One agreed to meet them. The delegation was led by a young named Hen, who had risen to leadership after the old regime collapsed. He approached One without the arrogance his people had once displayed. "Ambassador," Hen began, his 4 eyes showing genuine respect, "I come to propose an alliance between the Remnant and the Free Worlds Alliance." One raised an eyebrow. "Why would we ally with you?" "Because we learned," Hen said simply. "We brought chaos to your world thinking you would break. Instead, you showed us that chaos was your natural state. You were simply waiting for an excuse to unleash it. We were arrogant. We believed we were superior. You taught us humility the hard way." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My people were conquerors because we knew nothing else, but you showed us a different path. You could have destroyed us completely, but you didn't. You defeated us, then offered us peace. We want to learn from that. We want to be better." One studied the young. He saw sincerity in those alien eyes. But he also remembered the destroyed cities, the dead soldiers, the near destruction of Earth. "Alliances are built on trust," One said. "You've given us no reason to trust you." "Then let us earn it," Hen replied. "We'll share our technology. We'll help rebuild worlds we destroyed. We'll work under your supervision. Give us the chance to prove we've changed." One thought for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "The Council will consider your proposal, but understand this: if you ever think about starting another war of conquest, remember what happened when you tried with humanity. Remember that we stopped holding back. Remember that we became the storm you tried to unleash." Hen bowed. "We will remember. That memory will guide us forever." The meeting ended. Hen left, hopeful for the first time in years. One watched him go, then looked out the window at Earth spinning peacefully below. Admiral Wu joined him, having watched the meeting from the observation room. "Do you think they've really changed?" she asked. "I think they're terrified," One replied. "And terror can be a powerful teacher. We'll see if the lesson sticks." "And if it doesn't?" One smiled grimly. "Then we remind them why attacking humanity was the worst mistake they ever made." Wu nodded. They stood in comfortable silence watching Earth. The planet had survived. Humanity had survived, and in surviving they had changed the galaxy forever. Below them in the training halls, Captain Jin was teaching alien pilots advanced combat maneuvers. In the university, Dr. Haewon was giving a lecture on cooperation. At the research facility, Na and Jinho were presenting a new faster-than-light drive design. Across known space, Colonel Woojin's peacekeepers were preventing conflicts, and in classrooms on a dozen worlds, Sungmin's students were learning about freedom and resistance. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the or the most advanced, but they were the most adaptable, the most stubborn, and the most dangerous when pushed into a corner. A memorial had been built on Earth for those who died during the war. Millions of names were inscribed on black stone, a reminder of the cost of freedom. At the center of the memorial was a statue of Captain Jin in her pilot suit, looking up at the stars. Beneath the statue, her final words were inscribed. They thought bringing chaos would break us. They forgot that humans were born in chaos, molded by it. We didn't fear their storm, we became the hurricane. Visitors from across the galaxy came to read those words. They came to understand what humanity represented. Not conquerors but survivors. Not aggressors but protectors. Not angels but not monsters either. Just humans, fierce and determined, who had shown the galaxy what happened when you threatened their home. The Free Worlds Alliance grew stronger each year. New species joined, attracted by the promise of mutual protection and cooperation. Trade flourished. Technology advanced. Peace, though fragile, held. And Earth, once considered a primitive backwater, became the heart of a new galactic civilization. Not through conquest, but through the respect earned by those who had fought impossible odds and won. Commander One, now an old man, stood at the memorial one evening. He touched the names of soldiers he had led into battle, friends who hadn't come home. "We did it," he whispered. "We showed them, we showed everyone." Behind him, the sun set over a peaceful Earth. The sky was clear of alien warships. Children played in parks where battles had once raged. Cities that had been destroyed were rebuilt, stronger than before. They had brought chaos, expecting to find weakness. Instead, they found humanity at its finest, united, fierce, and unbreakable. They had wanted to conquer Earth. They got a war they could never win, against a species that would never quit. And in losing, they had inadvertently created something new. A galaxy where strength was measured not by the ability to dominate, but by the courage to protect. Where the fierce could also be kind. Where chaos could be channeled into creation instead of destruction. Humanity had said, "About time we got fierce," and they meant it. The galaxy would never forget.